Emmerdale star Mark Charnock has warned that his character Marlon Dingle's marriage could be at risk, amid Graham Foster's return to the village to win back his ex-fiancée Rhona Goskirk. While we thought that Graham was killed in 2020, in the Currydale crossover it was revealed that he was in fact still alive. After attempting to save April from evil Ray and Celia, Graham insisted that he was back to rebuild a relationship with Joe. But this week, his true intentions became clear when he told Rhona that he was still in love with her. When Marlon got word of this confession, he angrily confronted Graham and told him to stay away. Rhona promised Marlon that Graham is history, and they are stronger than ever as a couple. But when we ask about the future of their marriage in an exclusive chat, Mark teased that there is unfinished business between Rhona and Graham that may lead to heartbreak for Marlon. It's hard to answer that without giving too much away, he says. It's introduced a fragility that wasn't there before, despite the year they've had, which has brought them together as much as anything else. But Graham coming along has sent fracture lines through it, for different reasons for both of them. The unresolved thing between Rhona and Graham could damage anything. It has the potential to be very destructive. Graham returning from the dead was a huge shock for viewers, and Mark tells us that this major plot came as just as much of a surprise to the Emmerdale cast that he explains. Your initial reaction is, he's coming back? Like the audience, what? He's alive. So, that's your first reaction, and then when you read the scripts where they explained how he's faked it, you think, oh, that's really good, I love it. Zoe, Henry, who plays Rhona, and I knew immediately that they would have to revisit old history, and it would affect us, so we had quite a lot of discussions about that. We anticipated that it would cause our characters problems. And then Graham Foster came back from the dead. Not metaphorically. Not in a dream. Not in a fleeting memory. Alive. When the shockwaves of the Currydale crossover revealed that Graham, believed murdered in 2020, had in fact faked his death, the village was left reeling. But for Marlon, it wasn't just another sensational twist in a place that thrives on them. It was personal. Very personal. Mark Charnock, who has portrayed Marlon for nearly 3 decades, now warns that the return of Graham could expose fault lines in Marlon and Rhona's marriage that neither of them are prepared to confront. And this time, love alone might not be enough. A ghost from the past. When Graham first stepped back into the village, his story seemed almost noble. He had returned, he claimed, to rebuild bridges, especially with Joe, and to make amends for the chaos that had followed his supposed death. But intentions in Emmerdale are rarely that simple. The real bombshell dropped when Graham confessed to Rhona that he was still in love with her. For Marlon, hearing those words secondhand was like being punched in the stomach. He confronted Graham with fury barely contained, demanding he stay away from his wife. Rhona reassured Marlon. She promised him that Graham was history, that their relationship was stronger than ever. Yet strength can be deceptive. In an exclusive chat, Mark Charnock admits that Graham's return has introduced a new fragility to Marlon and Rhona's marriage. One that didn't exist before. It's hard to answer that without giving too much away, Mark teases carefully. But it's introduced a fragility that wasn't there before. That word lingers, fragility. Despite the hardships they've faced, or perhaps because of them, Marlon and Rhona had grown closer. They had survived medical crises, emotional upheaval, and family turmoil. Each battle had reinforced their bond. But Graham's return doesn't attack their present. It resurrects their past. Unfinished business. Mark doesn't mince words when discussing what makes this storyline dangerous. Graham coming along has sent fracture lines through it, he explains. For different reasons for both of them. The unresolved thing between Rhona and Graham could damage anything. It has the potential to be very destructive. Unresolved. It's not that Rhona doesn't love Marlon. It's not that she wants to betray him. It's that history has weight. Rhona and Graham shared something intense, complicated, passionate, unfinished. Their relationship ended in chaos, and his death left questions hanging in the air. No proper goodbye. No real closure. Now he's back, flesh and blood, looking into her eyes and confessing that his feelings never died. That kind of emotional whiplash doesn't just disappear. For Marlon, the threat isn't just romantic. It's psychological. How do you compete with a love story that was never fully buried? How do you argue with a ghost? Shock on and off screen. Even for the cast, Graham's resurrection was jaw-dropping. Your initial reaction is, he's coming back? Mark laughs. Like the audience. What? He's alive. The twist was as shocking to those reading the scripts as it was to those watching at home. But when you read the scripts where they explained how he's faked it, you think, Oh, that's really good. I love it. The storyline required careful groundwork. A fake death isn't something viewers forgive easily. It had to make sense. It had to feel earned. Mark and Zoe Henry, who plays Rhona, immediately understood the implications. We knew immediately that they would have to revisit old history, and it would affect us, Mark says. So we had quite a lot of discussions about that. We anticipated that it would cause our characters problems. The actors didn't treat it as a simple jealousy arc. They saw the emotional complexity beneath it. Because this isn't about a new rival. It's about reopening wounds that never fully healed. Marlon's fear. Marlon Dingle has always worn his heart on his sleeve. He's emotional, impulsive, fiercely loyal. But he's also insecure in love. His history is littered with heartbreak. Failed relationships. Loss. Moments where happiness slipped through his fingers. When he confronted Graham, his anger wasn't just territorial. It was protective, desperate. He sees the danger clearly. Maybe more clearly than Rhona does. Rhona insists that Graham is history. That their marriage is solid. But Marlon senses something else. Hesitation. Not betrayal. Just complication. And sometimes, complication is enough to break something fragile. Rhona's dilemma. For Rhona, Graham's return is a collision of past and present. She has built a life with Marlon. Stability. Family. Partnership. But Graham represents a different chapter. One that ended abruptly and traumatically. When someone you once loved dies, your grief freezes them in time. They become memory, not reality. Now Graham stands before her, breathing, apologizing, declaring love. It's destabilizing. Mark hints that both Marlon and Rhona are affected, but in different ways. For Marlon, it's fear of losing what he has. For Rhona, it's confronting what she never resolved. And in Soapland, unresolved emotions are dynamite. A marriage under pressure. The irony is that Marlon and Rhona's relationship had never been stronger. The past year brought them closer through adversity. Shared hardship created intimacy. They supported each other when everything else seemed to fall apart. But external pressure tests even the strongest bonds. Graham's presence changes the atmosphere. Every shared glance becomes loaded. Every conversation carries subtext. Even if Rhona does nothing wrong, doubt can grow in the silence between words. Mark acknowledges the danger plainly. The unresolved thing between Rhona and Graham could damage anything. Anything. That includes trust. And once trust cracks, rebuilding it is harder than ever. The bigger picture. Graham's return isn't just a romantic complication. It shifts the balance of power in the village. He's strategic. Calculated. Used to getting what he wants. If he's decided that Rhona is unfinished business, he won't retreat easily. Marlon's instinct is confrontation. To draw a line in the sand and defend his marriage head-on. But what if this isn't a battle that can be won with shouting? What if the real threat lies in quiet conversations, in nostalgia, in what-ifs? Destructive potential. Mark doesn't oversell the drama, but his warning is clear. There is unfinished business, he says. It has the potential to be very destructive. Destructive doesn't necessarily mean an affair. It could mean emotional distance. Secrets. Resentment. A slow erosion rather than an explosion. Sometimes the most heartbreaking storylines aren't about betrayal. They're about realization. Realizing that something you thought was solid has cracks you never noticed. What happens next? Marlon is a fighter. He won't give up without a battle. Rhona is pragmatic. She values stability and loyalty. Graham is determined, and possibly blinded by what he believes is fate. The triangle is combustible. Will Rhona truly close the door on Graham once and for all? Will Marlon's fears push her away rather than pull her closer? Or will Graham's resurrection end as dramatically as his death? Mark remains tight-lipped about specifics, but one thing is certain. This storyline is far from over. And for Marlon Dingle, the greatest threat isn't Graham himself. It's the shadow of a love story that never properly ended. In Emmerdale, the past never stays buried. And sometimes, the most dangerous ghosts are the ones still breathing.